Welcome to the Head Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Honiger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Honiger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. You're with Ferg. Great to have you listening along. This week we are welcoming Charlie Douglas-Clifford to the show. Charlie farms in North Canterbury. Before we get into that, we've had a great couple of weeks with OptiU launching, which has gone down really well. So looking forward to rolling that out more widely. Team have done a great job of developing up the first module. Charlie actually did that first module, so we might talk about that as we go. So we might as well just cut into it. Charlie, welcome to Head Shepherd.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mark.
Cheers, mate. We might start as we do with this. You've listened to a few of these on your lawnmower, so you know the drill. Well, I guess your background and a bit about the Stonyhurst operation.
Yeah, well, I suppose quickly my background. I like all good budding South Island people wanting to embark on their journey, went off to Lincoln and did 3 years Lincoln, and then I went banking for 7 years and spreading around the country, a bit of time in the North Island, Nelson, and then down Timaru, plus a bit of time overseas in the UK for the sort of stock standard OE. So got a bit of living under the belt before I came back home, and then came home in 2012 after finishing my banking time. So that was sort of a bit about me before I came here. And Stonyhurst itself is I'm sixth generation farming here. With families been farming here since 1850, and we're sort of original pioneers in sheep farming, particularly in the South Island, but probably to a lesser extent New Zealand as well. So yeah, the sheep farming history on here at Stonyhurst has been around for a long time and has always sort of been a fine wool or mid-micron property, much to the dismay of probably a lot of the district in the area, and a lot of people sort of changing out as time's gone by. So yeah, we farm on the coast about an hour and a half north of Christchurch, and we're sort of a balance of flat and hill country, and farm your half-bred, quarter-bred ewes, cattle, and deer as well, breeding and finishing operation.
Yeah, cool, and it's a place that's steeped in history, obviously, with lots of. I remember one day we're looking through his old diaries for 100 year prior, and which have been retained, and we're actually looking at sheep's feet that day, and it was interesting to see that 100 years ago they're doing exactly the same thing, so on the same day. So, a challenge for a while.
It's a scary admission of progress in the farming industry that we're still doing the same thing 100 years later. So. Hopefully in the next 100 years we can start making a little bit more progress and speed the ball along a bit quicker. Yeah,
for sure. I think if we talk about that progress, you've been the host farm for the Southern Cross nucleus, and I think it was I turned up in New Zealand about the same time you went home on the farm, and I remember we went through the nucleus and the ram breeding nucleus at Stonyhurst and sacked most of them or all of them and sort of started again, and you've rebuilt that nucleus over the last 12 or 13 years, and at the same time been maintaining the Southern Cross nucleus, which has been a breeding program focused on feet, so that when we look at those diaries in hopefully 10 years time, not 100 years time, we won't have anything to do with feet on the calendar.
Yeah, well, I mean that's exactly it. I mean the progress we've made in the last 10 years or 12 years that we've been doing the Southern Cross and sort of the transformation of our own breeding nucleus flock has certainly sort of started a lot of that progress now already, and we're really starting to see the fruits and the benefit of that work now starting to roll through, and it's quite nice being able to talk about other traits or other characteristics of sheep now in particular that we can look at and look to improve, but it's not only that, it's sort of almost proving to ourselves that what was potentially thought to be the impossible or the unthinkable is proving that it is possible. So with sort of a bit of hard work and dedication and getting the right people on board. It's certainly proving that you can change your breed if you really need to.
Yeah, and I guess if we kind of go through that, and we'll get you to, I don't know if you remember your stats from the webinar the other night, but I think that's a cracking story of, so we'll see how your memory goes there. You are pretty good with numbers, so I'm feeling pretty confident. But I guess that objective, yeah, so it has been, like, feet was obviously kind of the reason that New Zealand Merino and MPI kind of started the program, but relatively quickly or even early on, we knew that there was a whole heap of other traits that we needed to have a profitable fine wool sheep, and so dag, worms have been pretty important, growth, constitutional robustness or whatever, whole body energy, obviously the wool itself. And so, yeah, I think the great thing about the program is that while feet have changed light years, I think a lot of the other traits have improved at the same time, which is the beauty of quantitative genetics.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And I did manage to find my piece of paper that I had from the other night that had those numbers written down. And yeah, I mean, to bore you with numbers, but yeah, I mean, 2018 we'd culled just shy of 1,500 ewes at weaning time out of just under 9,000 for foot problems. At that point, we were bringing in rams with a foot score of minus 0.5 was our 2-2 ram team coming through. So obviously sort of a 2, 3, 4 year lag of that progeny and those genetics starting to filter through. But the work was already sort of being done on the ram team before that. Fast forwarding through to January 22, so 4 years later, we were already down to 300 out of just under 9,000 ewes culled for feet. At that point, we stopped troughing ewes and to take away that prevention or that cure. The following year, we had a bit of a blowout and went up to 600 ewes that were culled for feet. But then that was the one-off year, and then we resorted back down to our numbers we were at, and it continuing to slide. So now our ram team going forward, just this last year, our 2-3 ram team was minus 0.7. So, I mean, that would be probably putting them in the sort of almost the 5 percentile or better range for foot rot breeding value. So where I see things going forward for the next 5 to 8 years, we haven't filled up the trough now for nearly 3 years now for any of the sheep. To the point last year, we managed to get a challenge this year in the rams, but last year we couldn't even get a challenge in the rams. And I mean, this year the challenge was in the circumstances of probably about 400 mils of rain in 2 months, and we really only just got a challenge, and probably within about a week or 10 days from foot scoring those animals, you would barely even know the animals that actually had the challenge and had any signs of foot rot. So not only were we getting a challenge, but they were also self-curing themselves back out too without any extra means. So yeah, we've certainly seen that progress, but at the same time we're managing to lift. We've brought our micron down by nearly 4 micron in the last sort of 10 years, 12 years, and performance of the sheep. We've lifted our lambing and weaning performance up probably nearly 15%. So all of the things multiplied together have definitely shown that there are other things that you can work on at the same time. But to really make the progress, obviously when we were culling so many sheep for constitutionally just not being able to walk, it was really hard to fine-tune the rest of the sheep and get them out. And I am a bit of a suckler for numbers, and I'm a bit of a suckler for data, and there's not many things that aren't recorded on the sheep that are here just through the EID, and when you've got all that information, it's sometimes quite nice to be able to cull the tail end off and just keep skimming the bottom. But if you haven't got enough capacity to skim the bottom, the first and foremost is they've got to be able to walk. Yeah, if you don't have any room, it's hard to make that progress. So we're certainly seeing that now.
Yeah, I think it's just a great success story, and just a bit of quick translation that troughing in New Zealand is foot bathing in Australia or other places maybe, but yeah, essentially running through or standing in zinc sulfate. I guess the other trait that, I don't know if we originally focused on it, but we certainly have for a long time is dag, and your environment is conducive to the odd dag, but obviously fly resistance is another challenge, not as big in the South Island, New Zealand compared to other parts of the world, but still pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, fly is a real big challenge for us here. Living on the coast, we do live in quite a damp environment. And so, and we do have a lot of bush around us as well, and that is a good haven for sort of housing flies and things like that, where the wind is probably not quite so prevalent. So, your fly definitely is an issue, and dag has been it's been. I won't call it a free lunch, but it has definitely been one of those traits that has been definitely very easily recordable and is proving to be very transferable in terms of genetic package and what it looks like at the other end. And yeah, it's amazing how quick get staff on board when they start seeing the power of genetics and breeding values and things like that, and when they're doing the work at the other end, not crutching sheep or not crutching so dirty sheep and things like that. It's amazing how much preference it suddenly takes on the selection table now. It is quite amusing now. The combination of the raw information and the breeding value now is certainly the first trait that the boys have learnt anyway.
Yeah, well, I think two of the most mind-numbing and soul-destroying jobs on farms are trimming feet and dagging sheep, probably. And so if you can genetically remove both of them, which is obviously well down the track of, that makes for happy staff.
Yeah, well, and it's actually also really good for their engagement and their learning as well. Like seeing, so many decisions, breeding decisions are made, obviously first and foremost from the owner or sort of their person in charge there, and a lot of the time it is around their preferences of what they're doing, and it is really great having the staff engagement as well of sort of having a say in terms of the direction of where things are going and their drive of wanting to get involved and understand and learn it as well. I had my stock manager this year. He was actually bored at the crutching trailer this year as the ewes were going on. He grabbed the wand and he just started dag scoring all the ewes as they were going on, commercial and stud and everything. And we actually had a look at all the data at the end of it and saw a very clear line of the dag score breeding value relativity to the raw information that was done on ewes, and a lot of those ewes have probably never been dag scored actually in their life to input a breeding value, but that was just through the genetic merit of what they were, and then also seeing the differing environments. So different mobs obviously under different condition stresses and things like that, and maybe might be a wet dry or a single bearing ewe come through from weaning compared to a ewe that weaned 2 thumping lambs, and they're being in different mobs, and the breeding values might be the same for dag, but that environment and that challenge of how much different that made, and having all of that information sort of out there and visible for everyone to see was really, really empowering for all of them. So that was good.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree wholeheartedly that dag has not been for free, but been the easiest thing to shift. And I've personally been blown away by how quickly we've been able to move it while achieving lots of other good things by just getting rid of those positive dag breeding values and then focusing on the negatives. Obviously, old 141 that had his first dag at 6-year-old helped a bit along those lines.
Yeah, he's certainly left a bit of a stamp around here, and I think he's into his 5th or 6th breeding season now, and so he's starting to get a bit of ancestry floating around the property as well. So that's certainly pleasing to see what he was a bit of a game changer for both dag and for Footrot. So 2 of those traits he's been right at the forefront of.
Yeah, he goes all right for a couple of carcass traits as well. He's
pretty strong for some of them as well.
Yeah. Just for I guess a bit of detail around the wool clip. Where is sort of 23, 24 now in mixed age ewes, or where is that sitting?
Yeah, mixed age ewes this year we're just 23.6. We'd been sitting around that 24.5 mark for a couple of years. Giving context, when I came home in 2012, we were sitting around 27. So we've certainly brought that micron down. The ewe hoggets now are sort of 20 to 21. Maybe the bigger, coarser ones a few of them might be pushing the 22. But yeah, we're sitting around that 21 mark now in our hoggets. So that's sort of really been a game changer. And the wool market has been a funny one. When I came home, a 26, 27 micron half-bred fleece was still worth quite good money. And the way the wool market has sort of been going, we've been quite fortunate to have had a bit of a micron focus where we've been going, because the market has been dropping at almost the same rate is what we've been able to wipe the micron off the ewes. So, what was sort of generally considered a good stock standard half-bred around that 25.5 to 27 micron now is almost a bit of a no man's land in terms of value comparably. And sort of trying to get down to that pointy end now is very important to retain the viability and the economics of a genuine dual purpose sheep. So we were always sort of aiming the breeding goal was always sort of try and sit between that 21 and 23 micron brand. And that was sort of where we'd been told the sweet spot was going to be for that sort of that mid-micron, mid to sort of quarter-bred micron flock. And it's sort of, I suppose, definitely sort of proving the case now. It's the coarser edge of that active wear, but it's still in demand as probably a coarser edge of merino wool as opposed to just, I use the word wool. That's almost been differentiated out now as being two different products. So, that finer edge, particularly in that merino style, is certainly still paying the fruits.
Yeah, so they're essentially a fine wool composite. Like I don't know if we haven't done the breed breakdown. We're probably sitting at, I don't know, somewhere 75-80% merino, are we, or slightly higher?
Yeah, I would say we'd be pretty comfortably around that sort of 70 to 80% merino now. That's sort of always been the funny explanation of where I've sort of gone for people is trying to explain what our sheep are. It's we've sort of gone away from the breed and we've gone to the traits, barring wool in the name of merino with the wool. There's probably not a lot of other really strong characteristics of anything within sheep that's empowering of having a name. So it's now around the performance, and like we've said, having feet to be able to walk is the first and foremost. They can't do a lot without legs, but having sort of covers, fat covers and muscle and things like that for condition and obviously growth rate and stuff for the lamb market, all still important. But so a lot of those health traits, worm dag, and things like that, and the recent one that we've sort of been dabbling with has been facial eczema as well, and it's not something that's, I would say, is a problem for where we are in North Canterbury yet, but it's probably only an hour or so up the road. So that will become something I believe as we continue to have change in our seasonality and things like that. And so I think that's another one going forward. And we're quite fortunate that we've had quite a lot of natural resilience to facial eczema so far within early stages of testing. So we've been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years and have been making some pretty good progress on that front too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just, I think we've mentioned where you are on the coast and stuff. I'm not sure if annual rainfall sort of around 1,000 mil, or is it?
Generally around about 1,000 mil. I term the word consistently inconsistent now. But 950 to 1,000 mil, so 38 to 40 inch, and very variable in the seasons. But it's sort of looking at long term averages. That when we average things out over a 10-year period, it holds pretty close to around that 950 to 1,000. But to put into context, last year I think we were about 800 mils for the year, and that included 100 mils at Christmas time. And from New Year's Day to where we are now in the sort of the end of May, we've already had 700 mils this year. So add in the 100 at Christmas, we've already had more rain in the last 5 months than we had for the whole 12 months last year. So very contrasting seasons, and a lot of it's come very thick and fast in the last couple of months. So since the 1st of March till the end of May, we've had I think we've had 550 mils of rain. So it's been quite challenging.
Yeah, I guess just to round out that picture, it's not like you're running a low production system on stones. Like it's, despite the name Stonyhurst, there's not that many stones around. There's some good limestone there to build out of, but you are running a lot of Italians and Raffino and running a sort of a high intensity or intensive system with intensive sort of species. So it's, I guess just trying to paint that picture that it's a very atypical fine wool production system, I suppose, but through getting the genetics right, they're things that people would have thought are impossible to run animals or fine wool animals under that scenario are now starting to thrive under that scenario.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it is run reasonably intensely. We don't have a lot of country, or if any country, that's sort of locked up and saved for 3 or 4 or 5 months of the year sort of thing. It's there's not many paddocks that would get more than a 30-day break unless they were sprayed out in a cropping rotation system or something like that. So we're pretty hotly on return, whether or not it be flat or hill. it is reasonably intensive on that side. So yeah, it's not your typical final property, and it is a question that we do get asked regularly around that. And there's definitely an element of emotion attached to the sheep that's there, but the devil you know is sometimes better than the devil you don't, and we know how the sheep will perform on our property, and we know how we hear feedback of how our sheep perform on other people's properties as well, and they're very movable. They can sort of head from the coast here and they can head to the mountains and still perform. But the dual purpose is the sort of the jewel in the crown still at the moment. And so long as we can maintain an economic fleece out of the animal, both hogget and mixed age ewe, and that's the biggest challenge with a lot of the crossing at the moment is people can get an economic return from their lamb fleece, but as that animal matures, when it's getting back out to that 26 to 28 micron, they're falling back into almost a bit of a no man's land again. So we have to maintain that focus and holding it at that pointier end of the 20s, but also maintain a profitable lamb production system, because at the end of the day, lamb and sheep meat, still make up 70% of our return from our sheep. So it is still the primary driver of the business.
Yeah. I want to swing now to EID, and obviously I don't know if you were the first, but certainly one of the very earliest in terms of, well, I guess more John than you in terms of EID usage. So there's been RFID tags on Stonyhurst for almost for as long as RFID tags have been in existence. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, talk us through how you use it these days, or I guess that history of how it's evolved. But you've sort of gleaned a lot of information about your enterprise over the years through knowing what individuals are up to.
Yeah, like I definitely can't take credit for that. I mean, Dad definitely was at the forefront of that in the early 2000s. Ironically, I can't remember if it was some Lincoln students coming up here, PhD students or master students or something, and I can't remember if it was they were doing work on worms or working on foot rot. It was one of the two. But ironically, being the primary focus of where we're at now, but they put some tags in some sheep to be able to identify the same ones coming back and sort of trying that out as opposed to a big manual written tag. And Dad definitely saw the vision on that, and we rolled it into our internal nucleus flock. So we were running a nucleus recorded stud flock, and it was around that simplicity and speed of recording information and being able to do everything without manually having to hold things. And that came from Dad's time 30 years ago, writing down numbers of ear tags on pieces of paper and weighing fleeces in the sort of the 80s and 90s and putting them into a big box for their weights, and then coming in and having to handwrite all that up on a computer at night and things. And so I suppose that double handling of information was certainly the forefront of why we wanted to do it. So we had been very early adopters, and then when Farm IQ originally came out as with a government incentive and stuff in there as well of rolling out EID into properties in the sort of early 2010-ish period, we jumped on board obviously with that and ramped up our EID usage right through commercially and so on, and to the point now where there's not an animal born on this property that doesn't get an EID tag chucked in its ear. And it gives us the ability to follow all those animals through and get real information around everything. And being tagging a lamb in the paddock is just as important about knowing that lamb as it is about knowing the performance and passing on information to the group of the dams that are in there as well, and finding out how they've performed and knowing what conditions or ages and everything else they were at, and really being able to paint pictures going forward to make decisions. And the more information you have, the more informed decision you can make at the other end. And yeah, you've got to have a bit of a passion about numbers and staring at a spreadsheet. And fortunately, I don't mind staring at a spreadsheet, but at the same time,
understatement of the day.
but at the same time, when you do understand them, you can make some very quick decisions, but make very informed and influential decisions in a very short time. And I can't remember the exact words of someone I heard recently around the value of experience and putting a price on experience and how long it takes sort of elder people to do a job versus younger people to do a job and things like that, and the price you have to pay. But the same sort of thing goes in understanding data and things. And if I can slowly just keep inputting information that doesn't take us any extra time and have it sitting there and then make an informed decisions of breeding directions, what could be what I'd say a 10 or a 15 minute sit down and analyse sort of situation and set up a draft, that could be a $50,000 to $60,000 increase in our productivity and profitability within our business. So yeah, as time goes on, it becomes very important. And we record a lot of information for the sake of recording information. And I would say 75% of the time we would go back and go, I wonder if we took a weight at this time last year, or I wonder if we did this, and I wonder if this is repeatable. And the amount of times you go back and you say, oh, look at that, we did do that, and we did do that. Oh, actually, over the last 3 years, this is the trend of what we've done now. But we had to get to the finish line to find out what the process was along the way and what we wanted to know. So that's why it is hard to sort of allocate the extra time. But I mean, I use fleece weighing as a classic example. I fleece weigh all of the ewes at shearing time, both commercial and stud. But we grow a fleece for 12 months of the year. If I was to drop that 1 year, then I go to it's 24 months, 2 years until I'm able to ascertain that information of performance. It becomes a big hole in your farming system. And I mean, I always compare it from my time sort of banking and things in the past. And in New Zealand, the most astute operators in terms of knowing their business and knowing where they're at on a daily basis would be the dairy industry. And they get a milk docket that comes every single day, and they can see whether or not the cows were pushed too hard the day before, or they walked too far to the cow shed, or whatever that may be. And they can see that in their docket daily. But if you ever asked to enter a discussion group with the dairy farm, they'd always be able to tell you exactly how much milk the cows are producing, how much grass they've got on hand, how much grass they're growing. They know everything down to a day or a week of where they're at. And without recording information, that certainly leaves us sort of behind as an industry. And it becomes habits of just sort of recording that information and then being able to use it and having a look at trends and things going forward. So,
yeah, one of the great examples of sort of not knowing you were collecting the right information at the time, I think, was when you had you wintered some sheep on fodder beet and then found the staple strength issue. I don't know if you want to talk through that example, but it's a cracking example I use a bit to, like, just as if you didn't have the information, you might have just continued to winter on fodder beet and have staple strength issues you didn't know why, kind of thing. But
yeah, well, that was in the drought, and we put a lot of ewes onto fodder beet, and it was our first year doing it. And to be honest, we put fodder beet in because it was a bit of a fad that was happening, and we sort of felt like you were going to miss out on something if you weren't part of the cool club. And fortunately, we sort of ramped it up and put quite a bit in, and it was a bit of a lifesaver. But we didn't really know how to feed sheep on it properly, particularly into pregnancy and late pregnancy, and we didn't get the feed balance right of protein and the starch and everything else that went with fodder beet. And we weren't feeding it enough supplement as it turned out. And at the time, it was very easy to blame the drought for animals in poor condition and lambing performance and stuff like that. But we got to shearing the following year and we started noticing, and again, come to the same thing. We record our information in the shed and we pass the barcode through. It not only gets fleece weighed, but we also record what bin line the wool goes into and if there's any faults, colour, breaks, anything like that, we record all that at the same time. I stand beside the wool classer and just record that information from the barcode. And we had a bit of break coming through our ewes, and naturally we just attributed that to a drought and pregnancy time and where it was. But as we sort of sat down and got to the close of shearing, and we sat down and actually went through the information and the animals that had the break, it actually turned out that 85% of the ewes that had a break had actually been wintering on the crop, and all the rest of the ewes that were on very little grass, but on grass, were still fine. And so we learnt a lot around around that of what impact that had and that feeding regime had, and that actually flowed on to us doing some trial work around the amount of wool they were growing and ascertaining different feeding regimes and things like that. We did a bit of dye band work, which was interesting, trying to put a hair dye in the sheep fleece, and thought this was a really, really smart idea, and put them back out onto the beet crop. And then we came back down to measure it again about sort of 2 months later, and I was like, oh, we don't actually know where we put the dye bands. We had to go and search the whole fleece to find where this little piece of, we'd sort of banded about a centimetre of hair dye in the fleece, which we now had to go and find again, that was fun, and try and get another dye band in beside it. And then we knew what was coming at weaning time, that we had to go and do it again. So that was an interesting learning curve. But we were trying to work out how much wool was growing and doing the staple strength and finding out if there was breaks and bits and pieces. So yeah, like all of that stuff. Yeah, it is really interesting. But yeah, without recording information, having recorded the scanning data and recording what ewes, specifically down to the EID tag, who I put onto crop and who I put into grass and everything else, that would have we would have had this big hypothesis that something had gone wrong, but would have had no way to be able to prove any of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that flows through to commercial classing, obviously, when we're there in a couple of weeks' time, or about that. Going through your commercial ewe hoggets, we'll know which paddock they've turned up from often. We'll know whether mum was mixed age or a two-tooth or even a ewe lamb. Can't remember if we had ewe lambs coming this year. And then maybe a sire team and certainly a single twin birth type. So there's a whole heap of stuff that we're sort of, in addition to looking at the animal, but there's a whole heap of stuff that, and what I know to be 100% certain is that we, over the years, would have culled every ewe out of a ewe lamb or out of a ewe hogget, depending on which country you're in. And you would have definitely, the twins out of maidens would have got a fairly raw deal as well, and even twins generally. So, I mean, it's such powerful information that we stop ourselves being biased by the environmental effects.
Yeah, if you were selecting everything just broadly on weight, and I mean, obviously just the wool type and micron, yeah, you 100% would be selecting all your singles because they're the ones that are going to look the best, grow the best, and have the best type of wool. And they haven't had that early, even prenatal challenge in their life. But yeah, I mean, again, that information is power. You have to sometimes keep your blinkers on because you do know phenotypically the animal may not be perfect under your eyesight, and you have to live with that animal maybe not being perfect for the rest of its time. But you also know that the future generations of everything that it produces going forward for the next 4, 5, 6 years or whatever that animal is going to be producing, you know you've selected the right animal, and you'll have that increase in productivity and performance of the animal that you're selecting from. So yeah, there is certainly times when the phenotypical classing you have to keep the bigger picture in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a bottom end. It doesn't matter what their what their status is. They're going anyway, but there's a lot of grey area when it comes to those fixed effects or those birth type effects. We might just quickly swing to cattle, Charlie. You sort of run a combo sort of Angus Hereford mix and have been finished everything. So just quickly about what the cattle operation does and how you run that.
Yep. So Angus Hereford and something in between cows. So we run some straight Hereford cows. We run some typically, obviously most of the black cows and the red cows went to a red bull to give us the red calves and a white face calf. And typically a couple of generations crossing the white face animals to a black bull till they were black again, and then repeat the cycle. So plenty of hybrid figure in there, particularly from the black line. The Hereford cows were certainly a bit emotional and keeping that there, but their performance holds true and can equally match that of the hybrid crossing. So they certainly have their place still. We, in uniqueness, we keep everything entire. We don't castrate any of our male progeny. We keep everything as bulls. That was a historical thing from 30 plus years ago when we had quite a tuberculosis problem, and moving store stock animals was a challenge. So bulls we could finish at a lesser lesser weight if need be, and they were slightly faster growing. So that was the historical sort of background behind it, and it's certainly something we've carried on. And we aim to be finishing our bull calves, if call them, at that start sort of sending them away at 15 months old, and we aim to have everything finished by about 18 months old, which is in time for weaning the next time round. And we're sort of sitting around that 300 to 310 carcass weight. And we're really, really trying to maximise the spring growth rates and all grass and really maximise that, I suppose, that testosterone benefit that the bulls have over the steers and the growth rate potential that they have. And I mean, on an all grass system, it's nothing to be doing 2.5 to 3 kilos a day through that spring period. So they can really pack on some beef. And the ironic thing, particularly in the New Zealand market, and I would challenge it probably worldwide, but I don't know what the markets are like elsewhere. But the ironic thing here is the bull beef for the manufacturing market is equally as valuable as the prime market, within reason. When you add in the time to finish and the days grazed and the dry matter consumed, they would definitely be a lot more efficient. And how it fits our system as well of having that country clear and gone and ready for the next crop to come back through is where it fits really well for us. So, yeah, our cows' growth is important, but there's definitely maternal traits. 50% of the progeny are females, and they have to join the herd again as well. So we do have to still concentrate on some of those maternal traits, and that's a lot around that sort of that condition of the animal and their fat and growth. But I also have a ironic twist on one of my breeding traits is I do like to hold a fair element of IMF in there, and it is, I don't know if it's a fad or if it's not a fad. I definitely believe eating quality is important, but for me as a producer who primarily is producing to supply a Big Mac patty, it does seem kind of ironic that I am trying to chase an eating quality marbling component. But if and when, and I say if and when, the market was to change significantly and there was a huge gap between the prime premium product and the commodity manufacturing product, at least I would have a herd of cows that were ready to make that change. And I mean, as we've seen in the industry, and I would say any commercial and stud breeders would agree, to make those changes without compromising a lot of other characteristics that you've got is incredibly difficult. And so I just sort of believe that that's just one of those traits that sits out the back that I just want to maintain a focus on. And cattle in particular, it's a lot longer cycle in terms of the decisions. There's only a few generations, your words exactly, Mark, but you only get a few cracks at your title to really make significant changes. So the bull I buy today is still going to be very relevant in probably another 10 to 15 years' time. I mean, if I sat there and use your numbers of 30 years, the decisions that I make now is going to probably see out a good half of my farming career anyway. So I suppose I have to stick to my knitting and stick to a plan. And look, I might get to the end of my time and find out I was wrong, but at least I don't even know if I'll admit it then or not anyway. But
it's a great insurance policy against market shifts. Like as you've said, it's not easy to do, but if you do it slowly, it's a lot easier than try to get to 3 or 5 years' time and the market shifts and all of a sudden you've got to try and buy a heap of bulls that are high IMF and shift quickly. Like if you've got it sitting there and not that well utilised, sending entire males out going into burgers, but yeah, obviously any cull heifers will be getting the premium for IMF, and so it's sitting there as an insurance policy, and it won't cost you as too much if you do it slowly compared to what it would if you try to do it fast.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, and it's the ability to continue to concentrate on the other traits as well. And I mean, I've obviously starting setting animals off at 15 months old. Early maturity is very important to have a sort of 450 day old animal that's weighing 600 to plus kilos or getting up to those sort of weights. They have to have an element of growth genetically, but they've also got to be fed. and we've got to feed those genetics as well. And same for the females. It obviously gets the weights up on the females, but as we get those weights up, we also have to bear in mind that there's the risk that our cow gets big as well, and we've got to remember that efficiency of the cow at the other end as well, and how much feed she has to consume in her off time, that we're getting good bang for our buck out of her as well. So, I mean, we've just split our heifers up yesterday, and we've got 75% of our heifers are already averaging over 300 kilos now. That's both mixed age and heifers. So we'll breed from all of them, but they're on a shutdown process now. They're very much on they'll be on a long winter of cleaning up, not a lot, because the work's been done for them already, and they'll bounce back in the spring so long as they can just maintain through the winter. They'll get a natural kick in the springtime, and they'll be in a ship shape to crack on and get in calf again as a 15-month-old animal.
Yeah, no, excellent. Yeah, fantastic weights, mate. We may as well knock out the last enterprise, the deer, as well while we're going. We won't talk about the turkeys running around the joint, but but deer, obviously it's a venison product with a bit of velvet on, but yeah, the focus is for venison.
Yeah, very, very much focused on the venison. Again, sort of transitional shift. When I came home, we'd been going through a transition, but we were primarily sort of sending weaners away January to sort of February, March, and at the time, well and truly had missed that chill market. A peak market for venison is sort of mid-September through to around late October, and that's been a historical chill market to hit the boat to head to Europe for the game season and into those Christmas markets and stuff. There's been a lot more work done from the deer industry, both through the meat companies and the industry as a whole, to sort of shift that, I suppose, that peak and shift that demand and educate a lot in the food services and keep the food on the menu a lot. And so the balance of the sales season now is certainly a lot better. There is still a small spike in that same period, but it's nowhere to the same level now. But we had changed our breeding system to try and kill sort of 85 to 90% of our weaners in that October, early November period from our hinds. So to put that into context, deer are sort of fawning down, calving down November, December for us, which is workload balance-wise quite a unique, different time, when obviously lambing and calving is in that August, September period. The deer they're in their own world. They do their own thing. You can put the stag out, and if the stag's not ready and the hinds are not ready for another month, they will just hang fire for another month. They very, very hard to dictate telling deer what to do, both
on all fronts,
genetically and all fronts, in a paddock or in a pen as well. But look, they're really cool animals to work with. The growth rate, performance, and everything out of them is very repeatable. We'll weigh up all our weaners in the next week or so. And I can pretty confidently now, with again going back to EID and data and power, I know pretty confidently now that they will do sort of that 130 to 150 grams a day over the winter, and then I'll get a nice big compensatory kick come out at the other end, and they'll be sort of winding themselves up to 300, 400, 500 grams a day in that springtime, and they really have a really good efficiency of converting that spring grass into growth rate. And I mean, when you're sort of having a look at a potentially high $9 to $10 schedule for an animal that after 12 months is hanging up sort of 55 to 60 or 60 kilos, it actually proves out to be quite an economic animal for the amount of dry matter consumed. They're probably only consuming about 2 sheep, so they're only double a sheep in terms of dry matter consumed. But I mean, in a world of where we're talking here, if we're talking even a $200 lamb, doubling that's 400, but these guys are doing 600. So it's the reproductive performance. They're still only producing singles, and yeah, just telling them when to fawn is enough of a challenge. I don't think we can tell them to have 2 yet. So but it's a very simple system. We aim to have them all gone, and that sort of by majority gone by the end of October, which actually works really well for us mating our ewe hoggets or ewe lambs, depending on which way you're talking. We can bring a lot of them in. They lamb for us that late October period, whereas our commercial ewes are lambing early September. So a bit later with the ewe hoggets, just to make sure we've definitely got that spring flush of feed really going in front of them, and they can one, grow that fetus properly, but we have to remember they're still growing themselves. And we can move those ewe hoggets into the deer unit and lamb them in the deer unit as well, and keep that unit really efficient and really productive. And it's by shifting getting those growth genetics in there and finishing them earlier, we've certainly been able to utilise that land a lot better.
Very cool. All right, mate, we won't move into the turkeys. Just there are wild turkeys running around the place at Stonyhurst as well. I'm talking about turkeys for the listeners' benefit, but yeah, no, really impressive operation across those three enterprises, and yeah, great to see it going from strength to strength. It's 175 years this year, which is a fantastic achievement. It's a long time to be on the land. That I don't know how true the stories are, but the stories are that one of the rallies saw it from the boat and headed back to find that bit of country. It's a beautiful bit of land, and yeah, great to see it being utilised to its full potential. But yeah, we'll finish up there and look forward to going through those ewes in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.
Thanks again to Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to MNSD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.